Now, as we move along the final weeks of the Reedsy writing course, we're shown examples of doubling up, essentially combining methods that we learned earlier. Now, this can help to accentuate a character as well as the plot to create a more gripping experience for the reader. Well, I'm Mike with WriterSanctuary, and this week's Reedsy Masterclass of how to write a novel, Tom Bromley dives into doubling up and how it's used in books. Now, on day one, we focused on using action or inaction to highlight a character and bring more depth to a story. The idea is that describing action, or the lack thereof, taken by a character can ultimately create a sense of change in story and character development. For example, a character not taking action to save a friend could be the underlying plot behind the story, while accentuating the type of person that the character is. It's all about stoking the fires of the reader's imagination about the story and characters, which can include even the smallest of actions, such as pouring a cup of coffee or lighting a cigarette. At the end of the day, actions and inactions can play a pivotal part in the development of a character in the story. Now on day 2, Tom Bromley showed examples of using action to accentuate characters, namely body language. Like highlighting the story, it all comes down to showing and not telling. This can be easily done through the use of body language for the character. It can be done with a combination of actions or with a single movement. Now, body language can also show the essence of a character by how they behave during specific situations, especially if it's realistic. This adds a layer of depth to the character, which is greatly beneficial to prompting the readers to care about the character overall. Now, adding action doesn't merely have to center around a single point of view, though. In fact, actions between two or more characters can highlight relationships, whether they're good or bad. Regardless of how it's done, body language can show a lot about a character even if it's an instinctual behavior to various stimuli. For instance, my character in Shadows will reach for the pacemaker at his hip in any situation that stirs fear or anxiety. Yes, he shoots first, shoots last, shoots more. When everyone's dead, try to ask a question or two. This denotes he is a gunslinger who fights rather than runs. He is always on high alert. Surprising him in any fashion could be quite deadly. Of course, this also highlights how stressed and high-strung he is throughout the book. Now, day 3 was all about using description and the story together. This means using the description as a way to drive the story forward instead of pausing the action to describe what is going on. I got tagged recently in a dialogue because I had way too much in between a reply and a question that really paused the story, so those are the kind of things you want to watch out for. You can also describe something the character needs to overcome to keep the pace moving forward. Using scene settings and descriptions are helpful when setting the mood or creating a certain atmosphere. For instance, weather often played a big role in various stories throughout the ages, hence the "it was a dark and stormy night" opening that often has been done to death. An example is one of my scenes in Kingmaker. There is a raging storm during that fight scene. I go into detail about the lack of visibility during the fight, how the water makes the leather armor more difficult to move in, and how the rain is making gripping a sword far more difficult. Now, I'm not just saying that it was a dark and stormy night, I'm describing how it is affecting the scene and the characters. Now, environmental threats don't have to simply center around weather, though. Things like locked doors or empty rooms, sunken ships only accessible by diving, or even the threats within a subway car can drive a story forward. On day 4, Tom Bromley provided examples of using description and character. Using the description, you can flesh out a lot of details about the character without it feeling like you're stopping the story from going forward. Now, describing the character is all in the details that can bring him, her, or it to life. Now, a way to do this is to provide small bits of information and leave a bit of room for the reader to interpret the kind of character about which you're writing. 3 ways to highlight the information involve place, possessions, and appearance. And appearance is probably the most vital as you want readers to see the individual. In my newest book, Shadows of Atlantic City, I am describing a man who is rough around the edges while essentially being forced to wear more elaborate clothing in order to fit in an aristocratic locale. So he has quite a bit of stubble on his face while wearing a tailored suit. It's his way of thumbing his nose to authority, being himself, while still wearing what is required. On day 5 was all about dialogue and story, and how what is said can drive a story forward. Now keep in mind that character development comes from voice while the story comes through conflict. Combining the two can be an effective way to keep the pace going in the book while engaging the reader to continue reading. It's all about that two-way communication that can set up a conflict as one character is trying to come out on top over the other in a verbal manner. The examples on day 5 were great at explaining the different ways authors can use dialogue to drive a story. I admit that I need more dialogue to help moving the story forward. And like I said, sometimes I put in a little bit too much in between questions and answers, or in the middle of a conversation to begin with, in general. I've got to tone it down just a bit. Now, the author interviews this week were all about how different writers edit their books. It's interesting to hear just how everyone has their own flow for editing the first draft, though a common denominator is to finish the first draft in the first place. Now, trying to fix everything as you go can be a slippery slope. You can get sucked into an endless loop of fixing everything as you're trying to write. However, some people are capable of editing as they go. It's not as common, but it is practiced by many authors. I personally know a couple of authors who have been stuck in the fixing stage for about 5 years now. Personally, I'd rather just finish the book outright and then go back and edit. I'm probably one of the few authors that enjoys editing a book. As I often say, your first draft is not the book you're going to publish. It doesn't have to be perfect, just completed. That's what editing and subsequent drafts are for. In my case, I added 12,000 words to Kingmaker after its first draft, all for the better. What I've been doing lately, though, is using the comment tool in Reedsy to remind myself that certain things need to be adjusted. That's because I'll often go through and read the previous chapter just to get the flow going again before I start writing for the next day. And if I come across something that needs to be adjusted or changed, I'll make a comment in it. I don't worry about fixing it just yet, and I finish writing what I've started. That way, when I'm done with the first draft, I can go back and address those comments first, then read through the book again. Now, the lessons this week gave me a lot to consider. For one thing, I don't think I add enough dialogue or description to drive scenes forward. But practice makes perfect. Still, I'm going to take what I've learned and see what I can do to make the books better overall. Now, the course is nearly at an end, and I've learned so much. I'm quite excited to see where I can take the books in terms of story development. Now, if I can just learn a bit of marketing, I'd be set. Because no one's going to buy the book if they don't know it exists. Well, at least marketing outside of TikTok, which I'm still rolling my eyes over. I really don't want to start a TikTok account, but it seems that's where everybody sells most of their books online, so when in Rome. Anywho, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. For more videos about self-publishing, blogging, freelance writing, or anything else I cover, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. I think it's going to do it for me today. I've got a lot of catching up to do right now. I'll see you next time.